Most of us want more pleasure, orgasms, and sexual satisfaction. There is definite inequity between women and men, and there is a strong bias towards intercourse. About half of the women who report having orgasms are multi-orgasmic. That proportion is much smaller for men. This video is not about difficulty to achieve orgasm, it is about expanding and multiplying your orgasmic and multi-orgasmic potential. Hello, my name is Valdo Lallemand. I'm a relationship coach. I created the Vibrant Couple to further my purpose of liberating love, the connection, and playfulness. Today is episode 6 in our Creating Greater Sexual Intimacy series. We're going to talk about sex as a pleasure practice. Shall we? I'm going to start with the typical arousal cycle for men, as it is typically what guides most heterosexual encounters. For most men, there is excitement, then there is a plateau phase, then there is orgasm and resolution. For most men, orgasm equals ejaculation. And after that, most men, unless you're in your late teens or early 20s, most men's penis becomes limp and they typically want to sleep. For men who suffer from PE, premature ejaculation, the plateau phase may be short or non-existent. All men experience the point of no return, an arousal state after which it is impossible to not ejaculate. Although most men's arousals follow that curve, women's can vary greatly. Here is a typical arousal curve for women. The excitement at the beginning is much slower and gradual and goes from plateau to plateau to plateau. For most women, external clitoral stimulation is very similar to men's explosive ejaculation, followed by a resolution phase. When we put the two curves side by side, men's are much quicker and women's are much more gradual and slower. Nothing new there. Because men's ejaculation is so penis-centric, most men do not understand that women's pleasure and orgasms are varied, multifaceted, and much more full body. Men, this is an opportunity for you to learn to pay attention to her whole body and her emotions, not just her sex. Although a quickie can be fun for both men and women, if your typical sexual interactions ends with a man's ejaculation, it leaves women dissatisfied. For women who are multi-orgasmic, after their first orgasm, they keep having one or more orgasms of increased intensity. Although having multiple orgasms can be a blessing, it can also be a curse when the average sexual encounter ends too quickly due to his ejaculation. You can see that the area of dissatisfaction is much bigger. If you are a woman experiencing this dissatisfaction, please do not blame him for your deep frustration. Men do not learn from women through blame, but through praise and encouragement. I invite you to first practice your own pleasure turn-ons and climaxes, both solo and with him. And second, to invite him playfully into your pleasure so he can learn to satisfy you more deeply. This is why I named this video Pleasure as Practice. One of the keys to create a highly pleasurable and mutually satisfying sexual intimate life is to learn and adjust each other's curves so you can be fully dancing with each other. One of the ways to increase her excitement and give her highly pleasurable plateaus is to increase the amount of foreplay. Women love foreplay. You can learn to delay your ejaculation. We're going to talk about multi-orgasmicity for men shortly. And you can also pleasure her in other ways than with your penis after you have ejaculated. I want to give you a few words of caution here. First, men tend to be very orgasm-centric. Many women report that their partner's obsession for her to have an orgasm is actually a turn off, and that they would by far prefer to have a highly pleasurable sexual intimate encounter than to somehow have to perform and achieve an orgasm. Second, also due to that masculine obsession for orgasms, many men learn how to delay their orgasms and have the impression that it improves their performance. But typically they do that at the expense of presence. An example of that is men thinking about baseball while they're having sex. It indeed helps them not ejaculate too quickly, but that is at the expense of their presence, which is what she really wants. The best solution is to become multi-orgasmic. This is not very difficult, but it requires dedication and practice, as for most men, ejaculation is so enticing that it is difficult to avoid. Very importantly, if you go past the point of no return, do not try to stop your ejaculation. The crux in becoming multi-orgasmic for men is to practice what is called as NEO, non-ejaculatory orgasms. So basically, you slow down before the point of the return. There are a lot of techniques on how to do that. And then you achieve a plateau. And then from that plateau, you have another phase of excitement, and you get to another plateau in which you can either ejaculate or bypass ejaculation by having a non-ejaculatory orgasm, and on and on. And as you see, that curve looks a lot more like the feminine curve of arousal. As you make progress in your practice to become multi-orgasmic, you can achieve higher and higher levels of pleasure and bliss. As you gain proficiency with non-ejaculatory orgasms, you can then, in your lovemaking, choose to have or not have an ejaculation. There is no judgment here. Sometimes it's wonderful to have that. Sometimes it is wonderful for one's feminine partner to have that flow of yang, that deep validation of your desire for her. There are a number of obstacles on the road to become multi-orgasmic. The first one is the pursuit of orgasm. So here I invite you to search for pleasure and more pleasure and more pleasure. If you have an orgasm, that will be a bonus. If your feminine partner has an orgasm, that will be a bonus. The second obstacle is the fragile male ego. You know, I'm a man, I should know. Well, my friend, here it is really important that you learn to be curious. You increase your willingness to learn and you practice. The third obstacle is the most pervasive and the one that brings the most benefits. Because men's ejaculation is so penis-centric, there is the expectation that non-ejaculatory orgasms are also penis-centric. I just invited you to become more curious and playful with your partner. Here, I invite you men to learn to talk with your woman and better understand and play with on how to expand the full-bodiness of her orgasms. That will greatly help you learn to dissolve your focus on your penis and learn to focus on having full body, non-ejaculatory orgasms. I'm hoping, whether you're a man or a woman, that you have a partner that you deeply love and that the two of you become curious and playful about exploring and practicing pleasure, orgasms, and multiple orgasms. If you are a woman watching this video and have a masculine partner, I invite you to learn to focus on your own pleasure and invite him to do the same. Orgasms will be a bonus. If you are a single woman looking for a masculine partner that will deeply satisfy you sexually, do not worry. There are more and more men who practice Tantra and become multi-orgasmic. If you are a man watching this video, I invite you to learn to pay more and more attention to your feminine partner's pleasure. Same, orgasms will be a bonus. This is not because women don't want orgasms. This is because what they most desire is a present and skilled man who will give her a lot of pleasure, with whom she will feel very connected and very playful. I invite you to take Tantra or Neo-Tantra classes in which you can learn to identify your point of no return. You can learn to slow your arousal before it and learn to create plateaus of increasing pleasure and bliss. Furthermore, I urge you, I implore you to invite your feminine partner to these classes, to these workshops. She will feel valued. She will feel loved. She will feel connected to you, and she will greatly reward you for it. Although I do not teach sexual practices on YouTube, I'm available for one-on-one coaching to help you practice these principles. Next video will be on love. Sexual intimacy is a great way of growing love in your partnership, and love is a great way of expanding, multiplying your orgasmic potential.